Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, your team's home base. Collaborate within a shared PDF space. You've got your docs, your plans, your specs, and then invite the crew to build what's next. They talk up the teamwork. They think that this design could be a contender. And when somebody wonders what's the next step, AI helps you finish the rest. Bolts are tight, now your plan's refined. Run a smoother business when you're all aligned. Do that with Acrobat. Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. This is the Cats and Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
This is Larry Kudlow here for the best of Cats and Cosby. Please take a listen to my earlier interview with General Jack Keane, who talks about all the latest developments on the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. And we bring in my good friend, General Jack Keane, retired four-star senior strategic analyst for Fox News. General Keane, thank you for helping out, kind of off the cuff. We appreciate it very much. Nobody knows this stuff better than you. And no one's been calling for this more than you have. And I agree. What can you tell us at this stage of the game? What does it look like to you, sir?
Well, so our audience understands, to begin with, this is the two best proven militaries in the world, the Israeli and U.S. militaries, that have combined to conduct a joint operation here, and the first offensive campaign in our joint history to take down this diabolical, tyrannical regime once and for all after almost 50 years of chaos and tyranny that they have caused, and killing literally thousands of Americans during that span of time as well. Credit President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu for the moral courage to see the historic opportunity and to seize it, given Iran is so vulnerable and weak. And as a result of a campaign that began in daylight, which is unusual in of itself, to achieve some tactical surprise so that the first targets hit were leaders. And we don't know all the results of that. It's unlikely we will get all the leaders, but we will more than likely get many. And that will be a major accomplishment itself. Also, the deception and partially reality of negotiations provided some cover also for this tactical supply, and also some of the posturing that was going on in our country about negotiations and the desire to have that as a plausible option when it never was a plausible option. And you and I have discussed that at length, Larry. Mm-hmm. Also helped in being able to achieve that kind of tactical surprise, because in Iran, they're braced for something to happen at night, not for something to happen today when people begin to gather in a work environment, etc. So that was step one. Step two is to take down their entire air defense system so that there's complete freedom of action for pilots throughout the entire terrain of Iran, something that was achieved in a couple of days during the 12-day war. and the psychological impact of jets flying, American and Israeli jets flying all over the airspace of Iran 24/7 over the next coming days and weeks cannot be underestimated in terms of the humiliation that has for the incumbent powers to be and the strengthening of the resolve of the Iranian citizens to finally, at the end of the day here, do something about it. Early results are good news. The Iranian response has been much weaker than we anticipated. They have recovered much of their ballistic missile programs, and they have short-range and medium-range missiles. As of a couple of hours ago, they only fired about 40 of those at Israel, and they were not in major population centers, so they were either intercepted or they let them hit because they knew where they would go and they would do no damage. There's been some attacks, I believe, on U.S. bases. We don't know the results of that yet. We are expecting that the Iranians have thousands of drones, and as opposed to flying them during the 12-day war towards Israel, because Israel had attacked them, the United States had not. They used those drones to fly those several hours, and obviously the fighters were waiting for them and shot down just about every one of them. They would likely not do that again and focus those drones on U.S. bases in the region. We are prepared for that, but we're also prepared for the reality of casualties. This is not a limited attack, as some people were suggesting a couple of days ago. This has always been an air campaign that was put together between Israel and the United States many, many weeks ago, actually months ago. And the details are comprehensive. It's going to last weeks, not days. And that is what we're about here. And we're going to have a lot of wins here, but there's likely going to be some low points and disappointments. And that is what this is. War. This is not a one-off operation like Maduro in Venezuela, or like Qasem Soleimani, or like taking down the Syrian chemical capability a number of years ago, or killing al-Baghdadi, or even the Midnight Hammer operation, which was a one-off, comprehensive, complicated campaign, but just lasted a short period of time. This is not an operation. This is a campaign of war.
It sounds like we're going to determined, U.S. military determined to take them out once and for all. Everything. Now, ICBMs, interesting. Your point about the ICBMs, there's been so much talk about Iran's ICBMs. Maybe they didn't have them. I mean, maybe they wasted them. Or maybe we took them out in the Midnight Hammer operation. I mean, what do you make of that? I always thought that was their really the last line of defense for Iran was these ICBMs.
No, well, a couple of corrections. They're not ICBMs. ICBMs are intercontinental ballistic missiles that traverse oceans that we have, Russia and China has. To date, we don't believe that Iran has any intercontinental ballistic missiles. They have medium range and short range. We do know for a fact, not supposition, but fact, that we destroyed about half of them during the 12-day war. But we do know they had about 2,000 left, and they have been recovering them rapidly since. One of the reasons for this operation to be conducted at all has to do with a couple of things. One is the rapid pace at which they were recovering these ballistic missiles, medium and short range. Secondly, Iran's determination not to change a thing after the 12-day war. Missile recovery, decision to restart the nuclear program but not to execute it, support for the proxies, money began flowing into the proxies again, and their determination to not change any of their objectives and aspirations and goals despite the 12-day war. You put that together with how vulnerable and weak they are, and Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump made the collective decision that now is the time to stop these guys once and for all, get them off the board once and for all, and rid the Middle East and the world writ large of this tyrannical, diabolical government that's been in existence for almost 50 years. So that's what drove the decision. However, in that decision, they were and still likely are very concerned about the capability that Iran was going to exhibit to come at U.S. bases massively with thousands of drones and also short-range ballistic missiles, and go after Israel with hundreds of ballistic medium-range missiles. And best of my knowledge, that has not happened. There has been a response, but it is much weaker than we anticipated. It's not because they don't have them. It's that when you take the leaders down, Larry, and you take command and control, and we conduct cyber attacks on the ability to an organization, a military organization, to communicate with each other, to issue instructions, provide guidance, provide support, etc., and you disrupt all of that, there is a price to be paid down at the lower level where the launch systems are and the missiles are where the drones are. And that is probably what has happened to their not providing what they... We had good intelligence that as soon as we began an attack, they were going to conduct a massive retaliation, which made us move up forward in the attack plans, the destruction of the drones, the destruction of the missile sites. So that is also happening, that destruction, but also the disruption is likely occurring because we're kinetically impacting the chain of command, but also cyber attacks are disrupting the chain of command itself.
You know, as long as we've been talking about this Iranian situation, going back several years, General, you've wanted to see attacks on the command and control systems. You've said this so many times. And so is that what's happening? I mean, is that what the U.S. and Israel is doing? Are we taking out command and control?
Yes. We're going after leaders, and these are civilian political leaders as well as military leaders. So you have the leaders trying to get the leaders at the top, but also the legislature is being attacked. Other agencies of government are being attacked. The IRGC, the Basel militia, the police infrastructure, a deliberate attack and decapitation of these structures that sustain the regime. We want to break down the ability of this regime to function, and certainly the initial function we want to disrupt the most is their military function. But we are clearly want to completely disestablish their ability to function politically inside the country as well. And so this is a very comprehensive approach to disestablishing the entire infrastructure, both political and military, that supports the regime. And that will take, we can't do that in 24 hours. That's going to take time to completely unfold itself. But we have the plans and we have the resources to do all of that, plus take down the missiles and the drones, etc. And whatever initial recovery they're trying to make of their nuclear sites, and we know what they're doing to the old sites. It's mostly assessment and some piece of recovery, but there's also one or two new sites that they've gone to, and we absolutely know where they are, and they will be hit as well.
We're talking with General Jack Keane, retired four-star general and vice chair, the Army Chief of Staff, and longtime friend, senior strategic analyst for Fox News, longtime friend and mentor to me. Can I just come back, General Keane, to the hitting the command and control and the leaders? Do we have any reports on hitting leaders?
We don't know for sure. I mean, all I have is anecdotal that we've killed a number of them. I don't know about the Ayatollah. There's all sorts of stuff running around about him. I've told that they haven't been able to contact him, but I don't think we can make any conclusions about that. That's going to take some time. You know, as you can understand, to unfold. In all of this, they're not going to likely volunteer everybody that's been killed, and certainly those renderings were likely done by standoff capability using cruise missiles fired from airplanes or submarines at outside of Iran itself. But we don't know if that's all that was done. We also know that there were some plans, for raids to be conducted on the ground, in and out, against selected targets. I don't know if any of that is unfolded, and if it did, they're not going to tell us anyway, based on whether those operations are complete or not. And they may not have chosen that option, but I know that there were plans being made, along those lines as well. I think what will happen, this is an operation that's planned for 2 to 3 weeks. I think what we'll see in a matter of days, Larry, countries will come together and try to get a ceasefire going here. So anticipate Qataris, Egyptians, Turkey, wanting to stop this. And what we have to have, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump will see right through that. We have military objectives that we need to conduct, and we have to finish this once and for all. And we can't fall prey to the political pressure inside the United States, inside Israel, and certainly in the region itself, applying that pressure to the Prime Minister and to our President to stop the killing. And we may at that time also have some casualties ourselves, and let's end this. We have to end it based on the military objectives we set for ourselves, and we should not end it until those objectives are achieved. A premature stopping this war would squander all the results that would have achieved up to that point that we walk away.
100%. The president said, apparently, I didn't hear it, but in his speech he said, major combat operations underway to obliterate Iranian missile factories, and he's telling Iranian troops to surrender now. This is this unconditional surrender. We talked about this during the 12-day war. I mean, is it possible there's splits inside Iran, or is it one, just one group that's in charge, no opposition? Because they're killing people at random, as you know. I mean, we've had Robert O'Brien on, this broadcast, and the kill number was up to something like 35,000, General. Maybe it's more than that. Snipers on rooftops just firing bullets into these dissident crowds. And I mean, is everybody in that crazy place, all the leaders on board with those kinds of tactics?
No, absolutely not. And that's why they brought in so many, militia groups. The anecdotal feedback we were getting from people on the streets is saying the goons out there with the guns, this is when they were all holed up in their homes. They had fled the streets. The people out there are speaking Arab, not Farsi. So they brought other people in, to do some of that killing for all the obvious reasons. They never committed their army troops, who are draftees and 19 to 22, and some of them likely live in those towns and cities, that they would be killing their own citizens. So, yeah, that has always been an issue for them. And listen, our CIA and obviously the Mossad is also working divisions within the government themselves to bring it apart and put pressure on them not to continue to support these diabolical leaders who are going to lead you all to your death, and to break from them. And that pressure is going to increase and mount. And certainly there's also Radio Free Florida, who's going in there and talking to the Iranian citizens. And our president dealt with them directly in his talk and appealing to them. This is your opportunity when the bombing stops to overthrow the regime. He is appealing to them, that he's telling them, I have come to help you. I have delivered what you asked for. Now it's going to be up to you. And obviously, whoever we're dealing with during that time frame, I'm hoping that we're able to, Larry, to bend them to our will, similar to what we're doing in Venezuela with the remaining thugs after Maduro's gone and after these elites are gone. Whatever thuggery we're still dealing with there, and it will be authoritarian, that we bend them to a will, and eventually, in time, and it will take time, to move from an authoritarian regime to a democratic government.
Got it. General Keane, thank you, sir. So informative. You're very generous with your time. Our audience appreciates you very much. I'm sure you're going to be very busy and are very busy, but thank you ever so much for helping out. General Jack Keane, folks, senior strategic analyst for Fox News, and he knows things that other people don't know.
This is the Cats Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. This is the Cats Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
Professor Alan Dershowitz says Trump is correct to crack down on sanctuary cities as they are unconstitutional. Here is Professor Alan Dershowitz.
We got Professor Dershowitz on. Why don't you bring him in?
We love him, of course, former Harvard Law School professor emeritus. He is the best. Professor Dershowitz, I have to ask you, so much going on. One of the topics tonight could be sanctuary cities, as we were just talking about with Senator Dave McCormick. What do you think the president should say? I mean, he's talked about saying, listen, this is unconstitutional. We're going to put some pressure. What can he do to states?
He should say, imagine if there were sanctuary cities in 1954 when the Supreme Court desegregated the schools of Mississippi and Alabama. And suddenly Mississippi and Alabama declared themselves sanctuaries for segregationists, for racists, for the Ku Klux Klan. You know, if you can be a sanctuary city for non-citizens, you can certainly be a sanctuary citizen for racist citizens. And you just don't want that. You want there to be one. And under the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause says when it comes to immigration, there's only one government, the United States government, that makes decisions about our borders. So sanctuary cities are unconstitutional. The statute that gave cities the power not to help enforce federal laws is unconstitutional. It should be challenged. And I'm hoping the president says he's going to challenge sanctuary cities in the Supreme Court. I would certainly help him out on that. I would certainly help write a brief against sanctuary cities being constitutional.
Judge, you wanted to say something.
Professor Dershowitz, welcome back. I want to ask you about this lawsuit that the DOJ is filing against New Jersey and its governor, who are going to attempt to deny access to ICE to pick up people in the state jails and prisons. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that the Trump administration will win that one. They certainly should win that one. And, it's all part of the same thing. This is Governor Wallace trying to prevent integration in the South with a different guise. But it's the same conceptual thing. You can't have two laws when it comes to things like immigration. We only have one government that controls the borders of our country. It's in the Constitution. There's no doubt about that. New York can't have different immigration laws than New Jersey, and they can't have different asylum laws than New Jersey either. So I think that if the president takes that issue, the American public will support him. Ultimately, the courts will support him. The Supreme Court will support him, and we'll be a safer country.
Absolutely. And what else do you think is a key item tonight?
Well, I hope he says that maybe we should get back to governing the country and stop all this McCarthyism focus on the Epstein lists and everything that grows out of Epstein. You know, just from a personal point of view, just the other day, they unredacted one of the lists, and it has the woman who accused me saying, I was totally unaware of anything wrong going on. The same woman that subsequently accused me tells the FBI in 2011 that I was unaware of anything wrong going on. But that was redacted. That was cut out. And for years, I suffered as the result of that. Finally, we had an unredacted FBI interview, and I've been completely and totally exonerated. And that's why I, from the beginning, have always wanted everything unredacted. The only thing that should be redacted are the names of minors, people below the age of consent. But anything involving an adult should be released and should be out there. Let the public decide. It shouldn't be selectively redacted the way I think politicians on both sides have called for. They're wrong.
You know, Professor Dershowitz, I'm curious your thoughts on this with, on the Epstein stuff. We've seen in England, Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, then who was it, Peter Mandelson, who was the ambassador. He just got arrested yesterday. I mean, this is so much. What do you think? Where do you think it's headed with the state secrets? Because that wasn't sexual. That was tied to giving documents. Where do you see that going, whether it's in England or elsewhere?
Well, England has very controversial law, and it's common law. It's not statutory law. And it says that anybody who abuses the trust, what does it mean, abuse the trust? Half of the American presidents have been accused of abusing the trust. I'm sure when the Democrats speak tonight, they will accuse Donald Trump of abusing trust. So I think that they're going to have to think very hard about whether or not you can use a statute like that. They're considering changing the statute and having the Parliament pass a law about the secrets. And secrets shouldn't be disclosed, but they shouldn't be prosecuted as something vague as violating the public trust. So, look, I've met both Peter Mandelson, who's a wonderful man, and I've met Prince Andrew, who was invited to my class and gave had a lunch for him at the Harvard Law School before any of this thing came up. And now, as the result of the most extreme McCarthyism that I've seen in this country since 1954, we're seeing so many reputations ruined as the result of anonymous accusations. And no adult, I'm not talking about children now, no adult should be entitled to accuse somebody of something without their names being disclosed so that they can be challenged both in court and in the court of public opinion. For example, there's one thing that was released recently. A woman whose name is redacted, I don't know who she is, said she gave me a massage on one of Epstein's planes. Totally false. I never got a massage on an Epstein plane. I never was on an Epstein plane with a young woman, but I don't know her name. So I'm actually thinking of bringing a lawsuit to have her name disclosed by the Justice Department. Another redacted person said she has evidence that Donald Trump did this and Donald Trump did that, and her name isn't even revealed. President Trump has the right to have those names revealed, too. These are adults, not children. These are 25-year-olds who are making money going back over and over again and getting money from Epstein, and then many of them helped Epstein recruit younger girls. So these are not innocent victims, all of them.
So in other words, if those people, if those women were above the age of 18, then their name should be disclosed.
If they accuse
at the
somebody
time
of something.
at the time of the accusation.
That's right. So
I
that
agree.
the person accused should have the right to check. What if the woman, for example, there's a woman named Sarah Ransom. She's accused everybody in the world of everything, and then she admitted that she made the whole thing up. If her name isn't disclosed, then we don't know. Or, for example, in my case, a confidential FBI informant says that I'm a member of the Mossad. I happen to know who this confidential informant is. He's in jail. He is a liar. The FBI discounted everything he said, but his name isn't given. He's just given as a confidential FBI informant. Makes him sound credible.
We could do a press release. We could do a press release on WABC and let 1 million people hear it.
Yeah, but his name is Charles Johnson.
Charles Johnson says he was a
member of the Mossad.
A member of the Mossad.
I recruited Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Ehud Barak to become members of the Mossad.
Write that down as breaking news, Control Booth.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Well, by the way, Professor, bravo for speaking out, obviously, because if somebody's accused unjustly, it's unfair.
Somebody has to. I have nothing to hide. I did nothing wrong. I've had sexual contact with one woman since the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. Her name is Carolyn Cohn, and she's my wife, and she's sitting down right next to me now. So, I'm very proud of my relationships, and so I'm not afraid of anything. Unlike Prince Andrew, who couldn't be deposed because his reputation was Randy Andy, and so if you accuse somebody who has a reputation like that, then they have to settle the case. I would never dream of settling the case with a false accuser because I don't have anything to hide.
Well, bravo to you, Professor Alan Dershowitz. It's always great to have you.
Thank you.
Letting me say my thing.
Always.
Thank you.
You are
Whenever
always welcome.
Whenever you have something to disclose, WABC will help you disclose it.
You're the guys.
We're ready.
Thank you so much.
Always. Thank you, Professor.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. This is the Cats and Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
Congresswoman Claudia Tenney of New York says the Democrats look terrible when they wouldn't stand for Americans in the State of the Union address. Here is Congresswoman Claudia Tenney.
And joining us now here on Cats and Cosby is the great Congresswoman from New York, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, I can't believe it must have just been Twilight Zone, I guess, being there in the chamber this week, watching the Democrats not stand up when they were asked, would you put American citizens over illegal aliens? What's the reaction? What's going on with the Democratic Party?
This is what they did in the very first Trump joint address, every other Trump State of the Union address. This is what they do. They don't stand up for the American people. And I thought that President Trump set the trap for them, and they fell right in it over and over. And the commercials are going to write themselves with, the vitriol spewing out of some of the members of Congress, especially on the Democratic side, just going, reacting to Trump. And really, President Trump beautifully describing and talking about great American stories, American people who rose above, who went above and beyond, and he awarded them and gave them the recognition they deserved. From great achievements in the military to people who lost their children, to crime or to the scourge of illegal immigrants having licenses and truck driver license. I mean, it was just a beautiful statement on America with a lot of great detail on these people and why every one of us should feel proud to be an American and why every one of us knows that you can't do this anywhere else. And this is why we recognize and honor those people who are great in our community. The average person is who we celebrate. You don't have to be a movie star like the Democrats always clamor around. You can just be a great American doing great work in your job or whatever it is, your mission, your task. And President Trump did a beautiful job highlighting that. And I thought it was the best speech actually I've ever heard him give because there was so much content about so many great people. And it was a thrill to be in the room. I know it was a long speech, but every part of it was great. He was funny. He was witty. He was warm. He was compassionate. His comments to Nancy Pelosi about the stock trading, did she stand up? I mean, he's just so quick-witted and so funny. I just thought it was a terrific speech.
Well, I listened to the entire speech, and I think he did a great job. I mean, he stood up for America and common sense. Stood up for America, stood up for common sense, and the people that did not stand up, he made them accountable about why are you not standing up? What is wrong with giving a soldier the Medal of Honor recipient? Why didn't you stand up for him? What is wrong with getting rid of drugs in America? I mean, there's so many common sense things that the Democrats didn't stand up for. I mean, how did you feel about it?
I thought it was more of the same with the Democrats, but he just proved in clarity in front of the world that the Democrats hate Donald Trump more than they love America. And you've heard that phrase before, but they really don't love America. They want to tear down our institutions. They don't believe in our constitutional principles, which revere individual rights and human freedom and human greatness and self-governance. They don't care about that. They're talking about Marxism and chaos and no support for our law enforcement and the rule of law. We cannot have a free society where we're always balancing that freedom versus security. And we want to maximize freedom as much as we can, but we also have to have security in our communities because we're free. And that's always, but when you throw chaos into the situation, like the Democrats, when you defund, demoralize, and attack our police, you end up with a chaotic society, an anarchical type of society, and you can't actually prosper. You can't actually have security and safety for your families, and you can't live the American dream. And that's why it's so important that President Trump said not just common sense, John, but rule of law, respect for others, respect for the police. It is just so simple and basic to a good society, and about citizenship. Citizenship has value, and that's something President Trump ran on in his very first term, and he renewed that again. Citizenship has value, and that's why people come from all over the world wanting to be legal citizens of the United States. And unfortunately, so many people have taken advantage of our goodness and our kindness with drug trafficking, human trafficking, and taking advantage of that citizenship that we so much revere as Americans, and new citizens as well. Actually, in some ways, appreciate the citizenship of being an American than most do, and most Americans who take it for granted.
Claudia Tenney, we just have a few seconds left here, Congresswoman. Very quickly, your reaction to the snowball attack. They finally, Mayor Mondani made it sound like it's a bunch of kids in a snowball fight. It was an attack on police. They finally arrest a guy. He is a repeat offender. He's 27 years old. He's not a kid. And now he's out on a misdemeanor. They reduced charges. We just have a few seconds, but your thoughts?
Yeah. All the worst of the Democrat policies. Again, demoralize, defund, disrespect the police, all in one. In addition to horrible criminal justice rights for criminals, not for victims. Always prioritizing the criminals over the victims and letting these people go and keeping our communities unsafe. And it's not just New York City. It is all over the state because these are statewide laws. We see it up in upstate New York as well. It's really just, we've got to change these laws. And you see the same thing happening in California where Gavin Newsom's parole board wants to put a multiple sex offender back out on the street just because he's 64 years old and he's been in prison a while. He's going to commit those crimes all over again against children.
Well, Claudia Tenney, thank you very much. You're right. That case is horrible in California. The great Congresswoman from New York. We so appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much, and have a good weekend.
Thanks so much. Great to talk to you both.
Thank you so much.
This is the Cats Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC. It's a common sense recap of the big stories. This is the Cats Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
Asia expert Gordon Chang says Chinese-run biolabs on U.S. soil are a huge threat to American national security. Here is Gordon Chang.
And let's go down to Gordon Chang. He's calling in yet?
is on the line.
All right, let's go to
Gordon G.
Gordon.
Chang, of course, on Twitter. And Gordon, as we're talking about threats to the homeland, there are these stories about these biolabs. Talk about what they're discovering in America.
Tell us what the biolabs do, Rita, so a million listeners that we may have know what they're dealing with.
Well, they're dealing with some very dangerous chemicals and bringing some in from, China and elsewhere, some very biological weapons. This is serious stuff. Gordon, your thoughts about where this is going on? I understand there are all these busts all over in different parts of America.
Yeah. So far, authorities have found 2 biological weapons facilities for the Chinese. The first one was found in December 2022. Inside, there were at least 20 pathogens, many of them for deadly diseases, including Ebola. I mention Ebola because the Wuhan Institute of Virology is studying, in other words, weaponizing Ebola. They also found in California, this Reedley lab, almost 1,000 mice that had been genetically engineered to spread disease. Now, on January 31st of this year, Las Vegas SWAT and federal agents raided a home in Las Vegas where they found more than 1,000 vials containing an unknown substance or substances, which those vials have been sent to an FBI lab in Maryland. But clearly what we're seeing is a pattern here, that there is a group of network of labs in the United States, which obviously are in preparation for a biological weapons attack on the American people with deadly pathogens. This is an attack on the United States. It's launched by China, and the United States needs to understand how serious this is and go after the Chinese, because so far we have seen this and previous administrations try to ignore what's been going on.
Now, let me let our listeners know there's one additional thing that these people are doing. What they're doing is they're structuring the biolab or structuring the disease by DNA. So they can kill specific people without killing the rest.
Yes. Since 2017, Chinese researchers have been publicly talking about what they call specific ethnic genetic attacks. In other words, attacks that will leave the Chinese immune and sicken and kill.
In other words, if
else.
they don't like Jews, they can have DNA against Jews, and they can kill just the Jews.
You're looking at Judge Weinberg right here.
I'm looking at Judge Weinberg, as I said.
Thanks very much for including me in that.
Yeah,
and if they don't like people from Poland, they can do that.
But I'm Polish and Danish.
We get an exception for
They'll make an exception.
I'm wondering, if you're only 2% Polish, do you get killed too?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Gordon,
I'm only 6% Jewish.
Poles are survivors.
All right,
so are the Jews.
Gordon, let me ask you
and
this.
And the Greeks.
In your column, which is absolutely terrific, in Gatestone, you point out that this is not a renegade operation, but in fact, some of the leaders of the military in China are behind this. In fact, you quote one of them as saying that if you lose 100 million or 200 million Americans through this biological warfare, then it's worth that price to win the battle against America. Isn't that correct?
Right. In the first couple of years of this century, General Cher Hao-tung, who was then China's defense minister, reportedly said that the regime should use disease to exterminate, not just kill Americans, but exterminate the American population. And General Cher said this because he wanted to clear out North America so that the Chinese could settle in the vast valleys and plains that were left uninhabited. Now, we don't have confirmation for this speech, but I do believe that he actually gave it because we have seen indications afterwards of the same maliciousness exhibited by the Chinese regime that the general exhibited.
Wow. I mean, we just have about a minute or so left, Gordon, but one thing I wanted to bring up I thought was so interesting. During this State of the Union, Jimmy Lai, and you can tell everybody who he is. I mean, a real hero. His daughter, I just saw, is going to be one of the guests of President Trump at the State of the Union.
Yes, Claire Lai will be there. She is a guest of Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey, a real human rights defender. I hope President Trump mentions her during his speech. Jimmy Lai is a Hong Kong entrepreneur, billionaire, who has been championing democracy. He was the editor of Hong Kong's pro-democracy paper, Apple Daily, and he is now serving essentially a life sentence in Hong Kong under the national security law. He's 78 years old. He got a 25-year sentence. That's essentially what they call a death sentence, Rita.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, he's a real hero, and I think it's beautiful that, as you mentioned, the congressman is going to be bringing her tonight and honoring her and all those who are fighting for freedom in China. Bravo. Gordon, we love you. Thank you so much, Gordon.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We always love having you on. Thank you. Gordon G. Chang, everybody on Twitter.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. This is the Cats and Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
Senator Ron Johnson says it's stunning that the FBI under Biden spied on Kash Patel and Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. Here is Senator Ron Johnson.
And joining us now here on Cats and Cosby is Senator Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin. Senator, obviously huge blockbuster news coming out about now the Biden FBI tapping at least one call, it looks like, with Susie Wiles, and also getting the phone records of the president's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and the FBI director, Kash Patel. What do you make of that?
Hello, Rita. Hello, John. Well, I've known about the obtaining records of Kash Patel since, I think, last November, where we got the records and we notified the director on that. But what we're just seeing here is the evidence just continues to mount, showing how wide Jack Smith and the Biden administration cast their partisan dragnet, looking for phantom crimes to cripple, and the whole purpose of this was a partisan purpose to cripple their political opponents, Republicans. Again, they're trying to make a crime out of doing what John Kennedy did, ultimate slave electors, what Al Gore should have done. But as disturbing as the violation of separation of powers with the obtaining records of members of Congress, including myself, the now FBI director, the now chief of staff of the president, when they were in their private lives, I would say as outrageous, not more outrageous, is all the records they were obtaining of ordinary citizens. In Wisconsin, it's over 30 people who these are people who've been working in party politics, county chairs, working in their counties. Some of them were selected to be the ultimate slate of electors by Judge Troupas, who has lawfare being conducted against him. He's up to like $2 million in legal fees, just trying to protect himself from felony indictment for forgery. They're saying it's criminal forgery, even though he completely disclosed it. The Wisconsin Attorney General office claimed that there's nothing wrong that he did. He was just representing his client. He's $2 million into legal fees, trying to stay out of jail because Josh Call, our Attorney General, is engaging in lawfare, probably coordinated with the Biden Justice Department as well. So again, this is outrageous what the Biden administration did. We're just finding further evidence of it.
Now, Senator John Katsimatidis, now, when they went after Susan Weil and went after Kash Patel, what year was that?
That would have been 2022, 2023. So
they didn't have an anticipation that they're going to be the FBI director and the chief of staff. Why did they go after him?
No, they were looking for any, I call them phantom crimes. They were looking for anything that they could use, anybody associated, in the past with President Trump, to try and dirty him, to destroy his potential candidacy. But again, I mean, they're going after the Republican Governors Association, Charlie Kirk's organization. Again, they were looking at everybody and trying to create crimes out of nothing.
Now, are you able to get them to testify to find out who gave them the orders to do that?
Well, John, in the investigation, from my standpoint, I like to obtain the documents so that when I get them and transcribe the interviews, when I get them to testify, I already know the questions I'm asking. Part of the problem, and again, listen, I'm happy to have House oversight committees bring these people in to testify, but we really don't learn much because we don't have the underlying documents, and it's very frustrating I just talked to Pam Bondi yesterday, and at the State of the Union address, she's frustrated as well. I mean, the FBI, Department of Justice, has been overwhelmed providing Jeffrey Epstein documents. And listen, I'm as curious as anybody else. They've had to obviously get rid of a bunch of partisans. A bunch of partisans quit. Because of the lawfare against people like Judge Troupas, it's very difficult for the FBI and Department of Justice to backfill, to hire people to do all this work. So again, liberals, this whole lawfare that they're engaged in is far more destructive than potentially crippling a candidate for president. I mean, this is impacting that duly elected president's ability now to govern, to actually have an effective and operational FBI and Department of Justice. I mean, it's really devious what the left has done here.
Senator Ron Johnson, you brought up the State of the Union. It was amazing to watch President Trump say, will you prioritize American citizens over illegals? And no Democrat stood up. You were there. I mean, what did that say to you?
First of all, that was a brilliant thing to do because it just laid bare just the cravenness of the Democrats and their ideology and their policy. The videos I've seen don't do the scene justice. I mean, you had to be there, just a few feet from these Democrats who were just sitting there like sourpusses. And not only would they stand up just to reaffirm that basic principle, right? I mean, the first duty of government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. But that's not the only thing they sat in their hands on. When we're celebrating the fact that a little girl who suffered grievous injuries at the hands of an illegal immigrant driving an 18-wheeler, and she's healing and she's in the gallery, they wouldn't stand up and celebrate that. They wouldn't stand up to express sympathy for the mother of that young Ukrainian woman who's brutally murdered on the train. And that's just part of it. I mean, they just sat there. I don't think they have it in them to squirm, to feel guilty, but they should have just been squirming, and they should have been ashamed, as President Trump said.
Senator Ron Johnson, how would you close this up for today, Thursday?
Well, we had a very important hearing in the Aging Committee. Rick Scott did a great job. This is rare disease, either week or month. And there are bureaucratic roadblocks preventing drugs that are effective, that are working, from being approved. Some of these children with rare diseases are going to be denied the drug that's been working with them. So, again, I'll be contacting Secretary Kennedy and Director McCary and the subdirectors of some of those agencies. We need individuals with rare diseases deserve the right to try, and that right to try should not be denied by these faceless bureaucrats.
Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for coming on this Thursday evening, and let's catch up again real soon.
Have a great day. Stay well.
Thank you.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. This is the Cats Cosby Tunnel to Towers Weekend Special on 77 WABC.
Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack says the way the Democrats acted at Trump's State of the Union was a disgrace. Here is Congresswoman Kat Cammack.
Well, Thursday evening. With us today is Kat Cammack, and she was sitting on the Democratic side of the Congress during the State of the Union, and she survived. And Kat, I heard you had a great time at the State of the Union. I understand that there's a lot of your Democratic friends that are very upset with you. Give us an update of what the heck happened.
Well, I could say probably none more than Chuck Schumer, since he was sitting two away from me. He basically was cutting his eyes and glaring at me all night, because every single time the president touted another accomplishment, I would stand up and clap and cheer, and I would look around at the Democrats around me saying, what's wrong with you people? Why can't you stand up for America? I mean, it's just so silly to me, and I really do believe that you've got to lead by example, which is why I'm always going to stand for America rather than sit on my hands. And it was a very stark contrast, and cracked me up that the media kept saying, who's that lady in the red dress?
And you never found out. I mean, I can't understand that if you have a choice of American citizens and you have a choice of migrants, why the Democrats take the migrant side? I mean,
it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And the worst part was when we were standing up and honoring and clapping for some of our American heroes, like the 100-year-old World War II veteran who received the Medal of Honor, or the young man who flew the helicopter in the Venezuela operation. Chuck Schumer actually at one point, under his breath, and because I was sitting on the Democrat side, I got to hear all their nasty comments, he said, "Oh, good grief." Like, I'm sorry, Chuck, you can't be bothered to stand up for an American hero? Good grief is what I would say back to him. Absolutely ridiculous. And they're all wearing Ukrainian lapel pins, but they couldn't bother to stand for a grieving mother whose daughter was killed by a maniac, career criminal who had been let out on soft on crime policies, and she was a Ukrainian refugee. They're all for Ukraine when it's overseas, but when it's somebody who's here in the United States, they could care less. The hypocrisy is never ending when it comes to the left.
Well, I suggested to the president the other day that he should speak out in Martin Luther King's voice and say, "I have a dream. Make America drug-free." Well, I guess he didn't listen to me this time because he didn't use that, but I think that would have been a wonderful suggestion. What do you think?
I think that's a great suggestion. But if there's anything that my experience at this last State of the Union taught me, and in years past I've sat on the Republican side, but having sat on the Democrat side, listening to their commentary, being the only one standing in a sea of people sitting, I now understand that they would much rather see the country fail than see President Trump succeed. That is how far their Trump derangement syndrome has gone.
And when did this happen in America? When did the Democratic Party? I mean, is there people in the Democratic Party that are forcing this situation?
I think it's their leadership. They're scared of the more radical elements of their base. I mean, you guys in New York have seen how this played out. You have a communist for a mayor who says that you need 2 forms of photo ID to shovel snow, but when it comes to voting, no.
Well, our mayor of New York met with President Trump today, and I haven't heard yet what happened. I haven't looked into it.
I'll be curious myself how that meeting went, but I
think the Mayor Mamdani put out a tweet that the meeting went well, but we haven't read exactly how well.
Well, and it makes me wonder if he was asking for federal money to help get the city back up and running after you guys got nailed with all that snow. That's probably what my guess is on that.
Well, absolutely. Anything else you want to tell the American people?
Listen, we've got to keep the pressure up on the Senate. While I may be pretty tough on my Democratic colleagues in the House, there's a running joke that the opposition may be the Democrats, but the enemy is the Senate. And that couldn't be more true as we're trying to tackle the Save America Act. We have the very, very critical midterms around the corner. We have to ensure election integrity. And that means that we've got to employ the talking filibuster, which would force these senators in the room in order to stop the bill. They have been able to stop the bill and hide behind a 60-vote threshold with the zombie filibuster. So we have got to keep the pressure on. This is so critical for these upcoming elections. And I think everyone should be calling their member of Congress, particularly their senator, and saying, please support the Save America Act.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and let's talk again real soon.
I appreciate you, John. Have a good one.
And everybody, thanks for joining us on this very special edition of Cats and Cosby. I'm Rita Cosby, along with John Catsimatidis. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best our nation has to offer, especially when it comes to health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer
treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families' health. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.